Well, it's so good to have all of you connecting with us today. My name is Chris, and we're in this series titled Mental Mayhem. And the journey, the conversation that we're on together is all about our mindset. You see, the tagline of Mental Mayhem is overcoming thoughts that wreak havoc. And it's so important for all of us to understand that what we think, our thought life, has so much power. The big thoughts, the little thoughts, the thoughts that go drip, drip, drip. You know those thoughts that it's the same thought over and over and over and over and over again. The dark thoughts that we kind of enjoy having those thoughts. I mean, we know it's unhealthy, right? But we still enjoy those thoughts. And then, those dark thoughts that we just wish we would never think about again. That our thought life, what we think, always generate our feelings, what we feel, our emotions. That our thoughts are connected directly to what we feel. And I say to people all the time, just because you feel it doesn't make it real. But yet when we start believing, we start leaning into our feelings. But all the time, our feelings deceive us. And what we think that generate what we feel, our emotions, always guide what we do, our actions. You think back to 2025. I'm just telling you, some of the biggest messes in your life, all were generated because of your emotions that were connected to your thought life. Practically, I was thinking about this, and this is just how, in a kind of fun way, this is how it looks. Every Christmas, my wife Kim is so intentional when it comes to what she puts in our stockings. So sometimes she puts the same things in our stockings, and other times she picks out very different things that are so specific to each one of us. And one of the things I get every year in my stocking are the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup trees. It is my favorite, entire year, favorite candy, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup trees. Well, when she first started to stuff my stocking years ago, she'd buy a king size. They had 2 of them in it. Now, if you ate both of them, that was 350 calories. It was a third of your daily allowance of fat and 2/3 of your daily consumption of sugar, just in those 2. And yes, 8 grams of protein for those protein people, but not healthy at all. Well, somewhere along the way, she upgraded me from the king size to the 6-pack. And she would say, now don't eat them all. You can share them. But I'm just letting you know. I knew I shouldn't eat them all. But I would start thinking thoughts like, well, Chris, you can pace yourself. Just eat 1 a week. That's fine. And then I would say, well, okay, Chris, 1 every 3 or 4 days, right? And then I would say, just 1 a day. Like, the new year is coming. Hear those thoughts? The new year is coming. Eat 1 a day from Christmas to New Year's, and then the New Year, you can work it off. And I would go through all of these thoughts, and then all of a sudden, the stress of Christmas, the stress of post-Christmas, I would be tired. And all of a sudden, emotions start to connect into all of those thoughts as I try to rationalize. And before I know, guess what I would do? I would eat the entire 6-pack within a few days of Christmas Day. As I was working on this whole idea, I was looking for images, and guess what I discovered? I just discovered this. Do you know what they make? They make a bag of Christmas tree Reese's trees. They make a bag. In fact, 65 come in the bag. I'm like, there's a bag with 65 of them? I'm like, oh no, I could, again, my thought life, I was just like, I could get a bag for the year. I could pace this, right? I started thinking that. And as I looked at this image, you know what else I discovered? They're snack size, so they're smaller, which means you can eat more for less calories. Okay, maybe not. And I literally found myself sitting at my desk, staring at this, and my mouth started watering. So, in front of all of you witnesses, okay, this is a legally binding contract. You're all my witnesses. Here's a contract between me and my wife, Kim. Kim, no matter what I say to you over the next 348 days leading up to Christmas, no matter what I say, I only need 1 Reese's Christmas tree at Christmas time. Okay, we're now all accountable, and you're all my witnesses. But just think about right? Our mindset, what we think, will generate what we feel, which will guide our actions. Now, in part 1, we looked at this word unanticipated. And my encouragement for us is for us to anticipate the unanticipated moments in our life. And that the idea of anticipating it isn't some like cup half empty anticipating. No, this is like a proactive, up on our toes, right? Being on the offensive type of posture to say, hey, I'm going to anticipate that things are going to happen this year in 2026, and I'm going to anticipate that God's going to do what God does. So we need to lean into the challenge. Hey, I understand things are going to happen this year. Things that I don't see coming. I'm just going to lean into it. And as I lean into the challenge, I'm going to let go of control. Why? Because I realize that I don't control much anyway. And hey, God, as I anticipate you doing what only you can do, I'm going to anticipate by living in reliance of you. Hey, God, I'm just going to have this posture. I'm going to have this position. In fact, we saw this lived out in this guy's life named Elijah, this Old Testament prophet. He was living in his homeland, doing his own thing, and all of a sudden God does something unanticipated, calls him out, tells him to go talk to the evil King Ahab, tell the King Ahab that no rain is going to come to the land until Elijah speaks again, and then Ahab gets ticked off, and God tells Elijah to go hide. So Elijah goes and he hides. He's in isolation, fleeing for his life. And then God uses spiritually unclean animals, the ravens, to feed him. Then God tells Elijah, go to enemy territory, the homeland of the evil Queen Jezebel. So he goes to the homeland. When he's there, God goes, hey, find a widow. She's going to feed you. So he finds this widow with a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. And he's fed. I think about this list. And Elijah was living in a season of complete distress. The simple definition of this English word distress is extreme anxiety, sorrow, and pain. And this is what he's living in. This is what he's living in. His entire world has been flipped upside down. He's living in unanticipated moments. And then we're told that sometime later. Now, we don't know how much time later, but sometime later, he found the widow. She has a flour, she has oil, and all of a sudden, sometime later, the son of this widow, the son of the woman who owned the house, became ill. We don't know what happened. He got sick. But remember, there's drought in the land, there's famine in the land. And he becomes ill. He grew worse, we're told, and worse, and finally stopped breathing. The ancient Hebrew phrase is the air left him. You see, in ancient times, that's how they would tell if someone was alive or dead, right? Are they breathing or not? And this mom discovers her son, that the air has left his body. So she goes to Elijah and says, what do you have against me, man of God? Think about Elijah for a moment. He shows up to this widow, and this widow is literally, she had just gathered some sticks. She had her flour, she had her oil. She was on her way home to make a last meal for her and her son to lay down and die. This is when Elijah's life intersects with hers. And he says to her, no. Your flour and your oil will never run out until the rain comes. Trust me. Trust God. She was on her way home to die with her son. Then all of a sudden, now her son's died. And she goes to Elijah and she starts to blame him. She goes on and she goes, did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son? You see, in ancient times, they believed that moments like this, where all of a sudden a child would get ill, or an adult would get ill, and they would die, that it was tied to one of their sins in the past, whether they knew about their sin or not, or generationally. It could have been a sin of a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent, way down the line. Didn't matter that the gods or God would punish them. And this is what this widow is saying to Elijah. Hey, so you just came to condemn me. You just came to point out my sin and kill my son. And Elijah had to just be beyond himself. He's like, whoa, time out. I mean, just sometime before, we don't know how much time before, right? It was all of a sudden God, through Elijah, right, is a hero, right? Saving the day. But now she quickly flips the tables. You see, I think back to this list, and we need to add one more thing to Elijah. He gets blamed. He gets blamed right away. It's his fault. The fingers are pointed at Elijah. And how does Elijah reply? What does Elijah say? Give me your son. It's all he says. We can learn so much about this moment from Elijah. There's a list of things that he could have said to her. He could have said, hey, woman, why don't you trust God more? He could have tried to shape her doctrine, her theology of God. He could have said probably one of the most insensitive things that people could say. Well, at least he's in a better place. He didn't say any of that stuff. He simply looked at her, standing in her pain, in her sorrow, in her anxiety, as she's blaming him, and just simply says, give me your son. I don't think there's a greater pain, sorrow, anxiety than a parent losing a child. I just don't think there is. It's not the order of life. I mean, there's pain and sorrow and anxiety when a child buries their parent. I've done that. But that's the order of life. We all know at some point, right? Some point life's going to end. But the order should never be a parent having to bury their child. It just shouldn't be that. And I just want to lean into you for a moment. Maybe that's part of your story. As a parent, as a mom, as a dad, you had to bury a child. And I just want you to know the pain that's attached with that. The grief that's attached to that. And so many times when I've had conversations with people, because that's part of my story, my wife's story, our family story as well. And I've heard countless people try to rationalize away. A parent will say, yeah, but my child was. Well, my child was only. Well, but my story is not like your story, Chris. And I always pause and stop with the person and say, you lost a child. Whether you held your child with your hands or you held your child in your womb, you lost a child. And the grief and the sorrow and the pain and the distress is unthinkable. And if you ever stand knee to knee or sit toe to toe with a person who's going through grief, whether it's a loss of a child or a loss of anyone, remember, saying less and being present should be your number one approach. Because in moments of deep distress and deep sorrow and deep pain and deep anxiety, presence is where love is. Presence is where care is. Presence. And Elijah just simply looks at this mother who's grieving, doesn't try to shape her view of God, Doesn't try to dismiss some of her pain and hurt. He just looks at her and says, give me your son. And she does. She hands him her son, and he took him from her arms, carried him up to the upper room where he was staying, and he laid him on the bed. And then he cried out to God. Now, this wasn't some babbling cry and a weak cry and just a few tears cry. No. This ancient Hebrew word literally means to approach and address aggressively. The image of Elijah crying out to God is like him marching up to God, him sprinting up to God. He gets right up to God. Nose to nose, eye to eye. He is staring at God saying, God, you and me now. I don't care what's on your to-do list right now. It's you and me. You and me. We're going to have a conversation now. This is all the emotion that Elijah comes to God, aggressively approaches God, and he cries out to God. And he goes, Lord, my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow that I'm staying with by causing her son to die? You can't get more aggressive than that. But it was the pain and the sorrow of his heart. It was the pain and the sorrow of the mother's heart. Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times. He literally laid his entire body over the boy. Now, this is significant. Remember the unclean ravens that God chose to use to feed Elijah? Elijah laying his body, touching his body against a dead person's body, made him, according to Jewish law, spiritually unclean. So he chose now to make himself unclean as he laid his body across this boy, and 3 times, he cried out to the Lord, Lord, my God, let this boy's life return to him. And the Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Now, does God heal people to this day? What's interesting about this moment, this is the first time in the Old Testament, in the entire story of the Bible, first time that God raised someone from the dead. First time. We're in 1 Kings. We're hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years since the beginning. And this is the first time ever recorded that God healed someone in the Bible. It's right here. And we think about the year we live in, the decade, the century we live in. Does God heal people to this day? The answer is yes, he does heal people. But we have to ask the second question. Does God heal all people? And the answer is no. The answer is no in the entire storyline of the Bible, and it's no now. And I recognize there's so much tension between these two questions. That's why I put these two questions up on this. There's so much tension. Okay, God can heal everyone. Yes. He can heal. Yes. But he doesn't heal all people. I don't know for you. Have you ever begged for someone's life? Have you begged to God like Elijah did, begging on behalf of this widow for her boy's life? I know some of you have. I have. But the hope I hold on to, because one day I'm going to have a conversation with God about these two questions, but the hope I hold on to is the third question. And this is what I hope you hold on to. Will God ultimately heal what's sin fractured? And the answer to that question is yes. God ultimately is going to restore, to heal, to make new again what's sin fractured. Sin fractured God's perfect creation. But the storyline of the entire Bible is the moment sin fractured God's creation, the length God has gone and will go to make everything brand new. That's the promise that Jesus, risen King Jesus, is going to establish his kingdom now and forevermore. And one day it will be perfect again. So maybe on this side of eternity, we're not healed. But the promise is one day, for all those who put their faith and trust in Jesus, that they will be brand new. Why? Because God ultimately is going to heal what's sin fractured. So when I pray for people, and I pray for healing for people all the time, and I just want to give you a framework. This is what I do all the time for people, as I pray for them or a loved one. Because I believe in the power of prayer. But I also want to steward the power of prayer so carefully. So when I'm praying for someone for healing, I start off with, I pray for miraculous healing power. With faith, with trust, with belief that God can heal. Because God can heal. I trust that. I believe that. I've heard stories about that. And so I start, when I'm praying with people, I pray that God will heal this person. I pray for the medical personnel, and I say things like, hey, God, I pray that, and I say the date when they're going into surgery or when they're having the appointment. God, I just pray that doctor, the medical staff will have the best day ever. Lord, I pray that you give them wisdom beyond their schooling. I pray that you give them clarity beyond their schooling. I pray that you give them insight beyond their schooling. Lord, I pray because I believe that God can heal by touching someone and He can heal through medical personnel. I believe in all of that. And so I pray with faith, that God will heal. And then I always say, but God, it's your will to be done. Because this is what Jesus prayed for. Hey, God, you can heal all people. Yes. But you don't heal all people. So God, I'm just going to pray. Your will be done. That's letting go of control. Hey, God, I'm just going to open my hands. God, I'm opening my hands to you. You. Your will be done. And then, you know what God has promised? He's promised His comfort. He's promised His peace. He's promised His guidance. So in the midst of extreme sorrow, in the midst of extreme pain, in the midst of extreme anxiety, when we're in distress, hey, God, you have promised. Maybe you won't heal, but God, you have promised that you will be our comfort and that you have promised that you will be our peace. And God, I'm just going to listen in the screams of my pain. I'm going to listen for your voice. And God, I just want to follow your step. Your will be done. I just want to encourage you. All three of these, as you're praying for healing, because you want to help someone, because this is what we see throughout the storyline of the Bible, how God works. But remember, ultimately, all things will be perfect again. And Elijah, we're told, picks up the child, carries him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, look, your son is alive. And then the woman said to Elijah, now I know that you're a man of God and that the word of the Lord, Yahweh, Lord, from your mouth is the truth. And that's where we'll pick up in part 3. There's a couple of insights I just want to highlight that I hope will help you, encourage you, guide you. The first one is this. It's natural when we're in a season, a moment of distress, for us to blame. It's what this widow did. I mean, quickly she forgot that God provided the flour and the oil to not run out, kept them alive. She quickly forgot what God had done, His provision, and all of a sudden she just starts blaming Elijah, blaming God. And there's two kind of sides of this coin. The first one is, the who are you blaming side, because I'm sure right now you're blaming someone that's hurt you, someone who deceived you, someone who blaming God. You thought God was going to heal. You thought God was going to act a certain way. You thought God was going to show up a certain way. You thought God's decision was going to look a certain way, right? Who are you blaming? You know right now. You know right now. And What have you been blamed for? I'm sure you've been blamed for something that you're just like, why am I getting dragged into this? It's Elijah. Elijah got dragged right into this widow's sorrow, her pain, her distress, right? Got dragged right in the middle of it. And here's my encouragement for you. On the who are you blaming side, I just want to encourage you, you got to start owning it. Healing can't happen when you keep pointing fingers at everyone else. I'm not saying own the stuff that's not yours. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying at the end of the day, stop blaming. Stop blaming. And just go, okay, this is what I can own. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to focus on. And if you're being blamed by someone else, just refuse. Refuse to own it. Again, if there's a percentage that you need to own, I always tell people, whatever percentage that you need to own, if it's 1%, own that 1% with 100%, fine. But sometimes, Elijah didn't own any of it. He didn't cause any of it. It wasn't his fault. And so I just want to help you release, because right now you're carrying someone else's blame. And guess what? Maybe you own none of it. And you just need to say, that's not mine to own. Now, you can still help the person, but you can't own their blame, which is exactly what Elijah did. He didn't own her blame, but you know what he did? He said yes. In distress. In his distress, he said yes. You saw the list? And now this widow was adding to the list. Blame was being added to the list. And guess what he did? He said yes to her. In her distress, he said yes. And this is my encouragement. For some of you, you're in a difficult season. And what you want to do is hunker down. What you want to do is convince yourself. You're saying to yourself, well, I want to help people. I just can't right now. Right now, this is going on. This is going on. There's all this going on. And all of that is true. I'm not making light of it. It's so easy, though, just to hunker down and pull inward and isolate and all that. And guess what I've discovered? It's in the seasons of your own deep distress that when you anticipate that God is going to do what God is going to do, when you let go of control, when you lean into the challenge, when you live in reliance, all of a sudden God starts to move you and your distress and connect you with someone else. Can you imagine Elijah walking up those stairs with that child, having no clue? Again, first time recorded in the Bible that God raised someone from the dead. He had no stories to pull from. He's walking up the stairs, probably going, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to come back down the stairs and face this widow? I don't know what. And he lays him down, and he just lays on him. Just lays on him. He doesn't care spiritually that it's making him unclean. And he cries out. He aggressively approaches God. And the gift God gave him in his own distress was he was able to walk down the stairs and hand the child alive back to his mom. I'm sure what you're going through right now is a lot. My encouragement for you with your thought life is to say, hey, God, in my pain or in my sorrow or in my anxiety, in my fear, God, right now, I'm going to look for opportunities to say yes in my distress, to help someone else in their distress. And I'm just telling you, one of the greatest gifts God's going to do in you and through you is as you step into someone else's pain, into their sorrow, into their anxiety, and just watch what God is going to do in you and through you in the life of someone else. And the last insight, cry out to God. Aggressively approach God. March up, run up to Him. Toe to toe, eye to eye. Let the spit fly. Go to God. Share with Him the pain of your soul. Allow it. He has big shoulders. He can handle it. So many times we try to temper our prayers with God, and I tell people over and over, no, scream out to God. Cry out to God. Yell at God. Go share with Him the pain of your heart. And I don't know what His answer is going to be. But what I've experienced, even in the moments where He didn't give me the answer I was asking for. You know what I experienced every time? His comfort. A peace that's hard to describe. And His still, small voice that guided my path. Lean in. Don't lean back. Lean in. Anticipate that God's going to do what only God can do, even if it looks different than you anticipate it to look. Let go of control and live in reliance. Let's pray. Lord, I just pray that that's the position of our heart. That's the position of our soul. Even in our sorrow, our pain, our anxiety, that, Lord, that will be the position. Trusting, believing, having faith. That God, even if you don't do what we expect you to do, that what we think you're going to do, that God, we just know that you work for the good, for those who trust you. So, Lord, may we anticipate your move. In your name I pray. Amen.